Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Complex Like Wine, the podcast where we talk about complicated things and improve over time just like wine does. So this episode is really special. We have Simone with us.
Hello,
Thank you for driving out all the way to here.
Of course.
Yeah. We don't have wine, but we do have our vitamin waters.
Yes.
It's not sponsored.
But I had to get the sports drinks in there.
Right. Yeah, so the theme this week, we're going to be talking about athletes and mental health and all that. So for all the athletes out there, this one's for you. So I'm actually really excited because haven't had an episode touching on athletes and sports and mental health. So I think this is going to be a really good episode.
I'm excited.
Yeah, well, cheers. Usually we cheers and just like take a swig. And so, people, if you're watching, you can notice I have red behind me. Simone has yellow, and then opposite with our vitamin water or colors.
Yes.
So Simone is a athlete, soccer player at USC, and so please kind of share your journey, where you're at. You're doing really big things right now. You just got signed on with Nike, so congrats to that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess a little spiel about me is I do play soccer for USC. I also play for the U23 women's national team. I've been in the youth national team cycle since I was 14, which I take pride in. I signed to Nike last year, and I've been doing events ever since, and I've been living the dream. To sum it up, it's been a great journey. It's definitely have its ups and downs, and I'm so excited to help come on the show and help talk about mental health with you.
Thank you. Yeah. So, okay, how was it for you when you got accepted to USC, and now with the league and everything, the nationals, all that, like how's that been for you?
It was definitely a unique journey. I am a legacy child. My older brother went to school with me. My dad graduated from USC, played football. My older brother played football. My grandfather coached football. So the legacy runs deep. So I always knew this is where I wanted to be. I committed as a freshman in high school. So when I got accepted, I was like, oh, finally, like the gift that you've been waiting to open underneath the tree. It's here. So it's like all that anticipation, all that expectation built up over 4 years.
Wow, yeah. So when you were finally now playing at USC, how was that? Was it very surreal, or you just kind of knew already since high school, like, okay, this is just part of the journey?
It's part of the journey, and I feel like I let the expectations overtake the experience sometimes, and I do absolutely love it. I mean, who doesn't love USC? Fight on forever. But it's also one of those things where, like, it's great responsibility. So I want to show up for my best, for my family, for my school. There's a lot riding on it, and there's a lot of expectation for a player like me.
And then how has that been for your mental health when now you have a lot of expectations and pressure, or, all of that? How does that play?
It's challenging because, the path to success is not always linear, although many people may think it is. And, like, you may think that I'm on cloud nine all the time via social media, but that's not always the case. There's so many rejections and so many no's before you get that yes. And I think that we need to normalize sometimes failure, even as athletes, where we want to succeed, but it doesn't happen all the time. And just knowing that in the back of your head, like, you're going to win at the end of the day might not be today, but keeping that in mind.
And that's a really important point, especially as an athlete or, anyone that might be in, quote unquote, the spotlight, where you have fans or an audience watching 24/7, where you might fail, or there might be parts where you don't get the yes, or you don't get to play, or an injury comes in, you don't get the contract.
Exactly.
And so that, I'm sure that can be very difficult.
Yeah, that's basically the story of my whole freshman year. I came from being like, I've been to U20 Women's World Cup, and I was named to so many different rosters, and I came in as a freshman thinking like, oh, like, I'm gonna have the same type of, like, dream experience, and I was sitting on the bench, and I was like, what's going on? Like, no matter how much I shook and moved, like, I didn't crack the code till, like, the end of the season, and I couldn't wrap my head around, like, what am I doing? What's wrong? Like, is it me? And then that personalization of thinking that it's me versus, like, that's just an extension of me. Like, my sport is an extension of me, but it's not necessarily a personal attack on me if I'm not chosen for whatever roster, whatever start, X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, and then having to kind of separate your identity of who you are versus like the identity of an athlete. I'm sure that can get pretty fuzzy for a lot of athletes, right?
Yes, yes. I'm actually currently in sports psych talking. This USC sports psych staff is amazing, by the way, but I'm actually in sports psych doing the work to try to like detach my identity from my performance in my sport. And I think that it's so crucial, so important. I ended up getting into it because I felt like I had to. Because at a certain point, it just, you get so worked up and it stresses you out and it starts to invade in personal aspects of your life. So I basically did that. I think when I had a really tough go at it at the end of the U20s World Cup, like although I did score against Japan, I had a hamstring issue. I was like, oh, I've been training, I've been putting in the work for this one moment, and injury arose, and you're just like, wow, like I've been in the youth system for what, 6 years, like it was like the end of the world. Although I'm only 20, like, it was the end of the world in my eyes. And I went out and I asked for help, and that was a big step for me.
That's huge. Because whether you're an athlete, you're not an athlete, doesn't matter, guy or girl, it's hard to ask for help.
Yes.
It's hard to make that initial, like, okay,
yes.
we need some assistance
yes,
here. Yeah.
Yes. And like a lot of athletes are very prideful. Mm-hmm. So I think that is usually overlooked, the want. And the want is sometimes there, but it's the ask. And I think letting yourself be that vulnerable is crucial, but it's also not easy.
No, it's scary. Yeah. So tell me more about sports psych, because I haven't taken a sports psych class, but it's super interesting, and I'm just kind of curious to hear, like, what have been some of the more surprising things of sports psych, or the ones that have really resonated with you the most?
I think that the existence of sports psych has been surprising. I think that a lot of people, you have your therapy, but having it tailored to student athletes is so important. I mean, I think that it's become more in the talks of things, because one of my old teammates that I used to play with, she actually committed suicide. Her name was Katie Meyer, and she was just a ball of joy. She reminded me of myself in some ways. She killed it on the field. She was a goalkeeper, national team system, set up for greatness, really was. And she committed suicide after an incident that happened at Stanford, and I think it shocked the world, and it brought more attention to the desperate need of sports psych in college athletics, and how much more hands-on people have been after that event has been great. And I think that the push needs to keep going, but I think that student athletes are dealing with so many different worlds that they have to juggle at once. Mm-hmm. And it's a need, I think, for a lot of sports psych programs to start popping up around college sports teams. I think it's definitely a must.
Yeah. Already just to be an athlete, like to just be a college student, it's already really difficult.
Exactly.
So then to add on top of everything else with training, sports, rejections,
right.
losses, wins,
right,
that must be very hard.
Yes, and I do like that they have experience with the athletics world in some shape or form, mm-hmm. so they know what it's like to compete, or they know what it's like to be in our situation. So it's very easy to relate mm-hmm. to the sports psych staff.
So is your sports psych, is it more like a class setting, or is it kind of tailored to you get your sessions and therapy as well?
Yes, it's more, it's like the second therapy kind of set, but there is that aspect of, okay, let's see why certain things are translating on the field, what's coming from the field that's coming off the field. So it's kind of separating the two and pinpointing where you're getting what.
Mm-hmm. And if you're okay with sharing, what have been some things with your personal experience with sports psych that you've realized that were on the field that now we're coming off the field?
Yes, I think me, as well as a lot of athletes, struggle with perfectionism. Mm-hmm. I want to be perfect all the time. I want to get it right. I want it all, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You want the world, but I think that the biggest thing that I've learned so far out of this is you can have it all, but you can't have it all at once. And that was something that was really hard to get through my hard-headed brain. I'm very stubborn, and and I do want it all, but it's just knowing that there's a lot of time and you don't have to have everything by tomorrow. And I think sometimes when you mix it with the need for results, that you need it now. I'm very impatient as well. So it's just like, it's noticing that and being able to sit with it. And that's just one of the many things that we talk about.
That's a really, I'm sure that was such like an aha moment of like, okay, you can want everything, but not all at once.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm thinking about like personally for me, like I can be very much like a perfectionist when it comes to my projects and wanting to have everything like above and beyond, you know, very ambitious, but having to have the realization where you realize, okay, I can't get all of it. Right. Yeah.
Right. And then a lot of times you look in the mirror and you're like, okay, well, yes, I got it, but at what expense, you know? So like, for example, like you can be on the field and I'm like, oh, like I really want to get this shot down. I'm doing hundreds of reps. Wake up the next morning, now I injured my like quad, and I'm just like, well, like, yeah, I wanted that shot so bad, and I finally got it on the 100th rep, but at what cost? Because now I got to take 7 days off to recover from like the decision to go totally insane that one day. So it's kind of like that, but bringing it off of the field.
What have been maybe some other topics, whether it's sports psych or even that you've noticed with your teammates or even with coaches that you've realized are just really important that you might have not known was important to learn before?
I think that like being multidimensional has been one of the eye-awakening like things that some people have to come to terms with, because your plan A might not work. Like going along with the whole perfectionism thing, you assume that you're going to be that person that achieves all the success is in the 1%. And that's great, but the 1% is called 1% for a reason, right? So it's like when everyone thinks that they're perfect at their craft, they don't usually plan for the plan B, plan C, right? So I've seen some of my friends put all their marbles in one basket, and it's hurt them for it. Like they're graduating and they're like, oh shoot, like it's not, I may not be able to go professional, right? And it's so hard to watch. It really is, because it's like you see their dreams like crushing, but you also see that like they may not have been the most multidimensional student athlete, and like there's certain things that deteriorate along with that dream when it washes away. And I don't like seeing that rock bottom situation. So I think that the biggest thing as a student athlete is knowing that you are a student athlete, right? And like, although you may not get it in one field, you're more than welcome to go be successful in different fields. Like, I think that it's not the end all be all. So I think like recognizing that there's multiple avenues for us instead of just this one thing that we've grown up playing our whole lives. And it's hard. It's easier said than done. Like, obviously you spend a lot of time training and you love it so much, right? That's why you're in it and you're at one of the best universities, but it's you want to be confident in your ability, but I think that a little bit of realism, like sometimes in the back of your mind, just so you can have that plan B and C and take advantage of where you're at.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was definitely going into graduating undergrad, had all my eggs in the film basket. But then with the 2020, the pandemic, I realized, I should have had a backup plan. And so I'm glad that you realize that now, because I think if I could go back and tell myself going into college, that's the one thing I would have told myself, like, hey, it's great, like, keep pushing for it, but just also be multidimensional. Yeah. Allow
the thought to cross your mind.
Right.
And it does not mean that you don't believe in yourself. I think that some people might get the two things intermingled or messed up in a way. Having another plan does not mean that you don't believe in your first one, you know?
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I was just going to ask you another question, and it totally slipped my head. Man, those are really good questions.
We'll take a little
sippy sip.
Yes.
Oh, that's right. Okay. So I'm sure that also ties into trying to avoid burnout. Because I've had friends that were all athletes and then they graduate college and they could have gone pro, but then they're done with the sport because they've just burnt themselves out because they ran it to the ground. Have you ever kind of experienced moments where you can tell like you could go down that route?
Burnout is a tricky one because there's really no timetable on it. You know, you never really know when it's going to come, but I find that being in tune with yourself, like knowing yourself, and I've learned more about myself through my faith. And I think that like my belief in God has really shaped how I see myself and my purpose. Because ultimately I think burnout, well, in my opinion, burnout comes from like not really knowing like where your next step is, what your purpose is. I feel like it's more of a cry for help in knowing oneself more so than it is you're tired of your sport. In some cases it really may be like you're so physically drained, but I find a lot of times it's up here in the mind before it's the body, because that's just what I think. I know some people are just like, oh, it's just repetitive reps, but I think that if you loved it and you loved where you were at and you know where you're going and you have like a clear vision and your purpose set, then that makes burnout a whole lot less of a problem. But I do believe in noticing signs of when you need a little bit more care and self-care and love to be given to yourself and grace to be given to yourself. I think that some rituals that I've kind of included to kind of prevent even getting into the point where I'm like, oh, I have to stop, is like being grateful. Like one of my assistant coaches actually has like a gratitude jar. So every day he wakes up and he writes something in it and he's like, okay, I'm grateful for this today. So I think being grateful is a way to counteract that. Also, sports psych, like we were just talking about, I love bubble baths. It's one of those things I can put my podcast on and maybe you're listening to this and you're just in the bubble bath like, oh, okay. I can breathe. So like that kind of breath work, bubble bath combo is great. And then also like finding a support system like that can hear you out and really be there for you when these thoughts inevitably come up, right? So I think that those few things have definitely helped me with burnout, but also knowing oneself to know when you're getting to that point of, okay, let me take a pause, step back. And I have so many hobbies that, well, not so many, but hobbies that I do enjoy that I can pour into, because sometimes it may be something as simple as, oh, I finished my script yesterday and I feel accomplished in that area. And even though I had a bad practice, you know what? I made my bed. Even though I had a bad game, you know what? Like I had a good friend that came to me after the game and told me X, Y, and Z. Let's go hang out. So it's having those things in place to feel like you still won the day, even if you lost in the game or you feel tired in your sport.
Yeah. It's a daily choice. It's not an easy one by any means, but you have to be intentional, like daily choice. Like, how do I want to wake up today? Yeah. It takes a lot of work.
It does. It does. And like all of this is so much easier said than done, but I think that the want, even if the want is there, there's a will.
How is your faith, how has that been tied with sport? Like, I've heard from either people at my college when, you know, they've gone to sports and like the whole locker room talk and like how that can play. How, in your experience, how's that been in terms of, you know, with your faith and teammates and all that, if you've noticed anything?
Yes, I mean, I feel like mentioning faith as an individual is great for me, but when it comes to like team dynamics, it gets a little bit more like the line's a little bit fuzzier, because I know we're all trying to respect each other's beliefs. So it's like, do you feel comfortable doing a prayer before we walk out onto the game, right? And some universities are faith-based, some aren't. So it's just trying to figure out a way that everyone feels comfortable. And what I found to work is just like, hey, like, we're going to pray before the game. If this makes you uncomfortable, you could step out, let us know. And I think like the fear of bringing it up, because people are a little bit more sensitive and like trying to like not make anyone feel uncomfortable or not welcome is like, I guess, the biggest fear. But I think that if you're trying to live a faith-driven life, it's obvious it's going to come up in conversation. You're going to want to incorporate it, and you spend the most time with your teammates, right? So it's just one of those things where not being too afraid to step on people's toes to the point where you don't even bring it up in conversation. But it's definitely one of those important, like essential pieces of my life, and I will take any time of day, to anyone's time of day, to express how I feel about my faith. And I'd be lying to myself if I said that like God didn't get me to where I am. And I feel so blessed with my situation and how he's blessed my family, and I can go on and on and on for days. But I think that it's important to at least mention it in conversation and see if it works with your teammates, and usually the answer is yes.
That's good. Yeah. There's a little bit of that. You have to kind of get out of your comfort zone of like, hey,
Right.
putting it out there
Right.
to see if either people receive it or not.
Right.
But I think that's just really great to hear that you're so vocal about it, because, there's been times with my faith where I've been more passive or not as vocal because of that fear.
Right.
But then just kind of having to realize, okay, how can I still be very authentically me?
Exactly. Because you want to show up doing whatever you're doing as your most authentic self. And if you feel like you can't do that, then you're not bringing yourself, your unique self, to the team. And I think that would be the biggest disservice.
Right. Yeah. That's great. I love that. What for... one of the questions I want to ask for, like, let's say the younger athletes out there that, probably now look up to you or to your teammates, your coaches, like maybe when you looked up to your coaches, just kind of like the future athletes or even your peers. What are some things that you would want to tell them, remind them, or maybe some lessons that you've learned that you'd want to share?
Oh, man. I'm picturing the little me. And I guess a big thing would be to appreciate the small days, and that the small days and the little things matter, because those little things form habits, and habits make us. And I think that dreaming your wildest dream is so important. Like, whatever your dream is, double it and keep doubling it, because you only have so much, you have a finite amount of time. And I think that sometimes society might tell you that you can't do certain things, but I've always been a big believer in why not me? Like, why can't I be the person on that screen? Like, why can't I turn into my idol? Why can't I meet my idol? So it's just like pushing those barriers and kind of talking yourself up through positive talk and building that confidence, because I think that existing as a woman in sports in general is already hard enough, because you're supposed to be humble, you're supposed to walk a certain way, you're supposed to talk a certain way. And I think that some things would never be as scrutinized in the male game, which is why I'm just like, say your piece, like lift up your chest, whatever it is that you are after, I say chase it, and just don't forget about the small little things that go into getting and achieving your dreams.
Yeah, I really love that. Yeah, that's so important, I think, especially for athletes, just having to keep that in mind and remembering. And I think even, correct me if I'm wrong, but especially as like a female athlete, people might want to like push your dreams down a little bit, or it's, like maybe female sports aren't as important as male sports at a certain like level. And so reminding like young female athletes to keep pushing, and like I love that you said like your dream, double it, like go beyond.
Yes, and that's exactly what I keep trying to preach and talk about. And anytime I'm in the space, I love to keep harping on it. Like next week I'm actually going to the Women's World Cup with Voice in Sport in Cliff Bar, and our whole goal is to go in there and let people know, like, use your voice. There's not really equity in pay for women right now, especially in the World Cup. There's so many stats and differences in how much people are getting paid that I don't even know if people are aware about. So it's like, yes, we're just as important and yes, we play on the same field, and yes, we deserve more. So it's just continuing to preach that, to say that, to have people acknowledge it. And that only exists if you show up as your biggest, most authentic self in every space that you walk in. So I'm always a big believer in pumping yourself up, doing the pep talks, whatever it is that gets you in your zone, and makes you show up like, yes, I belong here, is what I'm for.
Do you have any like self-affirmations, prayers, mantras, Do you have any that you personally do for yourself?
I actually keep one.
Oh, I love it.
On the back of my phone.
Oh my God, yay!
God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as the pathway to peace, taking as he did this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it. Trusting that he will make all things right if I surrender to his will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with him forever in the next.
That's beautiful.
Yes. That's one of my favorites. I keep it on the back of my phone case for any times that I just need to stop, pause, and reflect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. I'm going to have to have you send that to me. That way, I'm going to put it in the bio for the podcast. That way people listening, they can actually read it. Maybe they would save it for later.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. What are some other things maybe you've learned with your own journey or mental health in general that have been very insightful, or maybe that you've learned from teammates or even a coach?
I think that forgiveness is a big one for me. Like, forgiving yourself for whatever it is that's been weighing you down, because the only way to move past it is to get that weight off of your chest and forgive yourself, or give yourself the grace to make mistakes. Because, like, one thing my coach always used to say is, like, there's two things that are guaranteed in the game, and that's the kickoff and that you're going to make mistakes. Mm-hmm. Even at the highest level, this is my national team coach telling me this, because she knows she's dealing with a group of specially, like, super talented players that don't really know losing. Like, it's a language that we don't even speak, and we're not used to making mistakes. So she has to remind us, like, hey, like, there's two givens and that's one. And knowing that you're going to make it and not let it ruin your whole game face and not be able to finish the game is important. So I think that was always a good nugget of advice, and to be you. Mm-hmm. I think, like, a lot of times when people are like the spotlight is on them, they end up trying to transform into what they think others might want of them, but you wouldn't be in that position if it weren't for what you did special or unique. So I think that I have that, like, written on my cleats on one of the customized ones that I did, and it just simply says be you, because that's what got me here, and that's what's going to keep me here.
Yeah, I'm loving all that you're saying. This is all really, really good things to remember. And it's so true. Like, you got to where you are from being yourself. So why are you going to sell yourself short, do yourself a disservice, and mold yourself in a way to appease what you think you should be?
Exactly.
Right.
And regret's going to get me before anything else, too. So I'm like, I'd rather go out and do it, like, be the man in the arena. I love that quote. But I'd rather go do that than go home and be like, oh, well, I wish I would have, and then maybe because that's going to get me before anything else does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we kind of touched on it at the very beginning, you kind of touched on now, but just kind of the reminders of when you do get the nose, when you miss the shot, or you lose the game. Like, what are some practical things you do for yourself to try to get through moments where you might be harder on yourself?
I mean, it's obviously frustrating. Mm-hmm. Like, I can't say that it's not. And the rate at which I've recovered has since shortened. I used to be like, like, I'm on this for like a month. Not healthy, right? Mm-hmm. But it's like, it's really your teammates. It's really your teammates in the moment that pick you up. And I think that the more that you give and the more that you radiate to others, it's like reciprocity, right? They're going to want to give back when they see you mess up or miss a shot, and they're going to be over there picking your head up. And I think that going back to that support system, making sure that you kind of treat others how you want to be treated. I know it sounds so cliche, but it's really true, because they're the ones in your immediate vicinity, and they're going to be the people that pick you up at your worst moments, because at the end of the day, you can't do it all.
Yeah. No, finding the people in your life that can be that support is so important.
Right.
So things in your career, what if you have any plugins or anything exciting coming up? We got FIFA World Cup starting today.
Yes.
Tell me more. What can people be on the lookout for?
Be on the lookout for this USC season. I really have faith that we're going to go far this year. I'm really excited about our team. And since we're in the theme of kind of separating me from my sport and like as my sole identity, I also am a screenwriter. So look out for my pilot being written soon. So I'm really excited about that. I finished my first 10 pages yesterday. So I'm really excited about that.
So, okay, since I have background film, what got you into cinematic arts and all that? So is your emphasis going to be more screenwriting? Is that what you're like really drawn towards?
Yes.
Yeah. So what got into that?
I always wanted something practical, right? Your business. I've always been driven. I feel like I could be a good exec, but there's always like that creative in the back of my mind that's like, oh, what if we did this? What if we tried this? I do enjoy rom-coms, any rom-com. I just wanted it to be more diverse and representative of what I love. And when you're traveling around the world, you're bound to consume a lot of TV, right? So I was always one of those people that went to movies with my cousin and we'd like movie hop and we'd do the whole shebang and it'd be the whole day. So it's really ultimately my family has always been my why, and they got me into it, and I just took it and ran, and now I want to perfect it, but in a good way, and in the way that I see it from my point of view.
That's really cool. It's very similar. I got into film because of my dad, because we would go to the movie theaters and we would movie hop. So I think from a young age I fell in love with the storytelling aspect of it.
Yes.
And so it's funny.
I love that.
It's kind of similar, yeah.
And it's one thing like that I will never be bored about, like hearing people's stories. I think it's so real. I think you'll never get tired of it. I think everyone's just has that unique tell, and I could listen to it for days, and I was just like, why not work in it? Why not pursue it?
That's so cool. Well, I'm excited to read your pilot at some point.
Yes.
Please share with me. Yeah, I would love to. Yeah, and then excited to see and follow you for the season with USC and everything. So what position do you play?
I'm a forward.
Forward?
That's
okay.
for the goals.
Yeah, so that way people listening, you know what to look out for.
Yes.
Well, I appreciate you sharing your story with me and the podcast and just coming out all the way out here just to chat with me. I really appreciate your time.
I'm so happy that you're doing this. I really am. I think that this is conversation that we need, and you're doing it. You're doing the work. So thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Thank you. Are there any last minute notes, tidbits that you want to share? Anything else?
I think I put it all out there. I mean, if anyone has any questions, you know where to find me. I guess I'll plug my Instagram. It's simonejackson.80. So this will be up there very soon.
Yes. Yep. And then I'll link all her stuff in the bio. That way you can follow her and then get the little prayer thing that you have. Yeah, that way you can include that as well.
Yes.
Cool.
Sounds great.
Well, cheers with our vitamin water.
There we go. Stay hydrated.
Stay hydrated. I know, especially with this heat wave right now. Well, perfect. Thank you guys for tuning into this episode. Thank you for taking the time to hang out with me and Simone. We'll include all her stuff in the bio. That way you can go check her out. And, you know, if you any of the soccer, football fans out there, you know, FIFA World Cup starting today and all that. So
go USA.
Yeah, so we're going to have a good season. All right, thanks, guys. We'll see you in the next one, and take care.